In this module, I'd like to overview the Koufax Kapow product for you. So I'll begin by talking a little bit about what the product is and what a Kapow robot is. We'll discuss this concept of swivel chair automation. And then I'll go through the various components that make up a Koufax Kapow solution, including RoboServer, the management console, CapZone, Design Studio, the development database, which is included with the product, and the new device automation service, also sometimes known as desktop automation. We'll also take a look at a term called synthetic API and what that means and how it applies to Kapow. We'll examine a Kapow product's structure, or project structure, and we'll look at Kapow robots, some solutions that robots might provide for you, and also take a look at how Koufax Kapow might fit into your other Koufax solutions. So let's get started. First of all, what does it do? What is Kapow? Well, Kapow provides you with something called robotic process automation. And that's a term, if you look it up on Wikipedia or something like that, you'll see a definition of robotic process automation and what it is. But Koufax Kapow provides automated integration of structured and unstructured data from almost any data source, including web interfaces. That's one that's used quite frequently. Databases, spreadsheets, desktop applications, which is new with Kapow10, and others. And you see in the graphic shown on the bottom of the slide here a number of sources that might be used to communicate with a robot. So we've set up a robot to go out and talk to these sources, extract certain pieces of data from these sources, and either migrate it directly to our back-end database or other application, or perhaps perform some transformation tasks as the data goes across. Things like deduping records, where you have duplicate records and you want to get rid of those, mapping data, and those kinds of things. So transformation can be a part of this. What is a Kapow robot? Well, a robot is simply a software application that you will develop to automate a user task or a series of tasks or a data integration workflow. Now, there's a concept here called swivel chair automation that a robot automates for you. And swivel chair automation, if you think about it, what it is intending to describe is something like this. Maybe I'm tasked to go out and do some shopping of my competitors, and I want to return all of their current items and all of the current prices so I can price my products in a competitive manner. So what would I do? Well, if they had a website, I could go out to their website, launch my web browser, click on their website, and then bring up the items one at a time, and there might be thousands of them. And for each item, I bring up the details, and I go, okay, I have this item. It's a pad of paper, and they're charging $1.98 for it, and it's 8.5 by 11 paper, and it's perforated at the top. So I am taking the information, I'm typing it on, getting it on one keyboard, and I swivel my chair around and I enter it in on another keyboard, and then I go back and get the next piece of information, swivel around, and so forth. Then I go to my second item and I repeat the task. And as you can imagine, that is something that's not only tedious, but can take hours or days or weeks to do. What a robot does is it automates all of that, and it does it very, very quickly. When I was first learning this product, I thought, well, how can I learn about how this works? And I thought, well, I'll do something that I was interested in myself, and I was interested in purchasing a 12-string guitar. Not that I'm any good at playing a 12-string guitar, but I thought they looked cool and they sounded cool, and I'd teach myself. So I wanted to find as many 12-string guitars that were out there for sale and get their prices and also the brand name and if they were new or used and all of those kinds of things. And I learned over the process of a week or two how to build a robot to go out there and do exactly that. And it generated a 17-page spreadsheet for me in a matter of about 45 minutes that had over 1,400 items on it, which I could then sort by brand and sort by price and all kinds of things. And by doing that, guess what? I learned Kapow. So I took something in which I had a personal interest and wrote a robot that also taught me the product. And that's a good way to learn, by the way. You're going to go through training here. You're going to learn to perform certain tasks. How do you continue to learn? Think about what you want to do and start developing a robot to do that. And you'll find the experience very gratifying when it all works. Okay, that's what swivel chair automation is. It's taking those very manual tasks and being able to replicate them in an extremely rapid fashion to return the results you want and output them perhaps to a database, perhaps it's to a spreadsheet, or maybe it's to your own website. Okay. Anyway, that's what swivel chair automation is. Now, Kapow consists of a number of components, and this can be a little bit confusing. So let's see if I can straighten this out for you. First of all, there is a component called RoboServer, and it must be running in order to run robots. And it says here to launch the management console. And although that is true in class, okay, the management console can be and often is in a production environment installed separately from RoboServer on its own Tomcat server, which is a Java-based web server. Okay, now the full product you're installing includes an integrated Tomcat server. We're going to run everything on one machine. But you can break those components up if you want. You can have one or more RoboServers clustered together if you have the need for that much power, and have management console running on a separate Tomcat server if you want. Now, management console not only gives you the ability to schedule and run robots, create things called caplets, more about that as we get down to the bottom of our slide here. It also provides the licensing for Kapow. Okay, so to do things like launching the Design Studio, for example, you need to have a license, and that's being provided by the Management Console. So let's look at that bullet item. The Management Console provides a user interface to schedule robots, manage databases, create and manage what we call clusters of RoboServers, and monitor performance metrics and more. It uses a web-based interface, so it runs right inside of your web browser. And it provides, as I said a moment ago, the required licensing for the product. All right. Now in class, what we are going to be doing is double-clicking on an icon to launch an executable that says Start Management Console. And if you watch what happens in the screen, I have a screenshot coming up, it actually launches RoboServer first, and then it goes ahead and launches the management console. It starts that on the integrated Tomcat server. Just remember, all of these components can be broken apart if you want to. Design Studio is our main configuration interface. It provides the user interface to create projects as well as their components, and there are a number of components we're going to look at in just a little bit, as well as create, test, and debug robots. So there's testing built in. You can actually run a robot from within Design Studio and see whether it's doing what you want it to do or not. There's a component called a development database. Again, it ships with the product. It's an Apache Derby database that's used for testing and also for training purposes. please do not use this database for production purposes. It's not designed to handle enterprise level interactions, but it's great for testing, and it's built in, and it does work with standard SQL commands. Kapow10. All right, Kapow10, actually you get to it from within the management console. It's a tab within the management console called Kaplets. And from with the Kaplets tab, there's a little hyperlink to allow you to launch Kapow10. All right, Kapow10 is where we create our Kaplets. We can run them there, but we can also deploy them there to individual users who then get an icon on their desktop that when they click on the icon, it actually launches and runs a robot for them. The device automation agent is a new feature with Kapow10. It is a separate component to install. So this is designed to install on remote machines on which you wish to automate certain tasks. So you can almost think of it like remote desktopping into a remote machine and manually doing a bunch of stuff on that machine, and then cleaning the system up to its original state and exiting out of the remote desktop. Well, what the device automation agent does, it allows you to automate all of those tasks. And this is a separate component. It's compatible all the way back to Windows XP for those legacy applications that a lot of companies find tough getting rid of. And we'll be working with that in the last section of our class. So we'll be creating a robot that includes device automation steps within it. Okay, and we'll be talking to that remote machine. Okay, so the management console, again, remember, must be started first. And here what I have done is I've double-clicked on a little icon in the Kapow program group that says Start Management Console. And actually, if you look at it, it runs in a command window, and it automatically launches my Robo server first. So that is started. And then it goes ahead and launches the Management Console. And you'll see that in the second part of my screen here. Okay, remember, it's the management console, though, that will provide licensing for you. Now, in class, it's going to be important that you leave this window open, because if you shut it down, you stop the services and you have lost your licensing, and you've lost your robo server to run your robots on. So leave it open. It's okay to minimize it. I have a note at the bottom of the slide that tells you that. Okay, but do leave these open. And remember, in a live production environment, normally these are configured as self-starting services, so you don't need to worry about, oh, what's this clunky command window doing here? They're run as services anyway, and that information is covered in the installation guide. In class, though, we'll be double-clicking on a convenient icon and launching both Robo Server and the management console. Then we will leave them running. The second window I have here is one where I have started the Apache Derby development database. And there's an icon to do that in the Kapow program group as well. So this is another one. I want to start access to the database, and I don't want to close it down. So I leave this window open, but like the other one, you can minimize it if you want to. This is what the management console looks like in your web browser. So because this is all on one machine, and that's what you'll be doing in this class, we just typed in the URL as localhost, and then the port on which it connects, which is 50080 by default. That is an item that is user configurable, by the way, but one where you might have to be talking to your network administrator to make sure that whatever port you select is going to be open and accessible. There are a number of tabs here. We're going to be going through those in a lot more detail in a later training module. Okay, Kapow10 is accessed in the management console by going to the Kaplet tab, and then there's a hyperlink there that takes you directly to Capzone. You can see the URL in the little blue box on my slide. Again, it's accessed on my local machine here via the management console, port 50080, and then a /Capzone will get you there directly. From Capzone, this is where we can create and edit caplets. Again, think of caplets as a small application, if you will, or a short desktop shortcut that can be deployed to users' desktops to allow them to run robots on a more ad hoc basis. The design studio looks like this, and there's a lot to look at here, so we are going to be working quite a bit in Design Studio, and I will be going through the various components with you in an upcoming training module. But this is where we can create and debug our robots. We'll build projects there. We'll create things called types and device mappings and robots and snippets and all kinds of things here in Design Studio. Now, one thing I will point out on this screenshot is there is a design mode. You can see it here. I realize it's small. We'll be looking at this in more detail later on, but it's a tab. It says design, and that's where I can see my robot design, almost like a little horizontal flow chart. And then we have a second tab here called debug, and this is where I can run my robot right in Design Studio from start to finish to make sure it's functioning the way I expect it to. Okay, robots can mimic and automate any set of mouse and keyboard instructions that you would otherwise have to perform manually. A Kapow project, which you construct in Design Studio, for every project there will be a folder called Library. Now, you will not see that in Design Studio. What you see in Design Studio is a structure that looks like this screenshot I have toward the middle of my page. So what we see at the top level here is the name of my project. This one happens to be called Hardy Hardware. And then underneath it, I have put a folder structure. This is not required, by the way, but believe me, it does help you maintain your sanity to do a little organization. I've created under my Hardy Hardware project, I've created some subfolders called databases, device mappings, robots, snippets, and types. Now, when you create these in Design Studio like this, if I looked at the Windows Explorer view, I would actually see those sitting underneath a folder called Library. So you see my project here in Windows Explorer on the right side, Hardy Hardware, then a subfolder called Library. And what I have done is, because I created these subfolders in Design Studio, they were also created for me in Windows Explorer. Databases, device mappings, robot snippets, and types. Now, this makes it very easy for you to move a project from one system to another, say from a design environment to a production environment. You just copy the top level folder and open it up in the new environment. Again, this structure is not required other than the library folder, but it does make things a lot easier to look at and to navigate. Okay, so what are they? Types contain what we call attributes. And attributes are named instances of the data type the robot will return. Okay, for example, you can have a type that contains several items that's going to be returned. There might be one that's short text and another one that's long text and another one might be date and those kinds of things. Okay, that's what a type is. We'll be creating types when we create our first robot, not in the too far distant future. Robots, automated steps to find and return the data that you want to get. Snippets is a piece of a robot that's been saved for reuse by other robots. So you created a bunch of steps to find and extract certain pieces of data, and you might want to replicate that extraction in another robot. You can save those steps as a snippet and then just import those into your new project. Quite useful. Databases may be used by robots for both input and output, and also, by the way, for internal processing if you wish, although that's not as common. Devices are mapped remote computers running specific desktop applications and tasks. So these are mapped devices, and where you want to automate a bunch of tasks on that remote device, you have to map that device, and that's what you see in the devices folder. So that's what a Kapow project structure might look like. All right, now you can see here in my example for my Hardy hardware project, I have created a number of robots, haven't I? It's not limited to one robot or one snippet or one database for that matter. You can have multiples. All right, so again, Design Studio looks like this. Windows Explorer folder structure looks like that. That's boxed in red. So let's take a little bit deeper look at robots. Flexible enough to meet the needs of your use case. So they can be used like a service, providing real-time integration using, again, we use the terminology synthetic API. They can be used for data collection, much like a batch job. Also, you can create caplets that provide a more ad hoc way of executing a robot because it's executed by an individual user clicking on a button. What about execution of robots? How can you do that? Well, you can execute them in Design Studio. You saw those steps in that kind of horizontal flow chart I showed you, and you can step, move through your robot and see each step execute and see if it is doing what you want it to do. Okay, so you can step through it manually, or you can click on that debug tab, and there's a little button that looks like the play button on your DVD player, and it runs the robot start to finish. And you can see it run that way. Or you can go to Management Console. You have the option, if you wish, to upload your robot to the Management Console, and then you can run it from there. So you can run it manually with a little run button, or you can create a schedule and say, I want to run this robot every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 9 a.m. Or you can deploy the robots as caplets to your individual users, or even set them up to run as services using APIs, REST services, RESTful Web Services, SOAP services, .NET, Java, and so forth. So lots of different ways to run your robot. How about deploying them? Well, remember, there's a repository library. You saw that you didn't see it in the Management Console. You saw the structure of it in Windows Explorer. But once you have uploaded your robot to the Management Console, there's a repository library there as well. And of course, that dist library that you can just simply copy, paste, and then import it into a new system if you want to. All right, so back to the idea of a synthetic API. Now, this was a term actually coined by some folks in the marketing department to try to describe what Kapow did when there was no API, no application programming interface for an application, but it might have had a web front end. And if that's the case, we can usually write a robot that will access what we want to, even without a real API and without writing hundreds and hundreds of lines of code. You simply build a robot to interact with the application's web front end. So it's agile, practical, and non-intrusive integration using web-based interfaces. And that's what a synthetic API is. Some of the solutions that Kofax Kapow might provide for you and where it's been used successfully in the past. I gave this example earlier about competitive pricing. Also, going on to social media and brand monitoring, doing financial research, open source intelligence, fraud detection. And we have a category here labeled ecosystem automation. So logistics integration. Okay, if you look at the world of logistics, and I worked for one of those companies for a short period of time, and they had a whole set of disparate tools that they were managing freight, in this case, as it moved from one point to the other, and so on, and had to have all of these separate applications. The truth is now with Kapow, you could have a single robot to pull from these various sources and integrate all that information into a single interface if you wanted to, or a single database. Partner integration, customer integration, talent management. Maybe you want to go out on a website that people have posted resumes on, and you want to gather information there. So a human resource department might find a Kapow robot a very useful tool to accomplish that. Content integration, where you're migrating content from one system, maybe it's an ERP system, to another one. Okay, you can do that. Enterprise search, legacy application integration. Also, and this one is new again with version 10, device automation. So where we might want to go to a remote device that maybe it's an old Windows XP system and it's running an application they don't even make anymore, but it's something that works. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. So you want to automate some tasks on that older application. You can run Windows applications with our device automation service. Java applications as well. Another use might be in the area of terminal emulation, where you have a terminal emulator on your Windows desktop for an IBM 3270 or AS400 system, and you want to be able to automate certain tasks that would be accomplished within that terminal emulation application. You can do that. SAP is another one. So, and there's probably others we haven't thought of yet, but those are the major categories for device automation. Now, how might you fit Kofax Kapow into existing Kofax solutions you might already have? Well, you might use it, for example, to gather data that will feed into your business processes that are using a Kofax Total Agility solution. Or maybe you want to supplement information extracted from paper and electronic documents that used Kofax Capture or KTM, Kofax Transformation Modules. Or maybe provide data for Kofax Insight dashboards, or provide data used in a mobile capture solution. So it's as open pretty much as your imagination. But it is a very capable product. So with that, what I'd like to do is a little end-to-end demonstration of Kapow. And I'm going to take one of the robots that you will be actually developing on your own in your lab exercises. I'm not going to do the real easy one, because that demo would be over very quickly and you'd go big deal. I'm going to take one where we have built and it's a little more complex, and we'll be extracting information from web pages. I'll save device automation until we get to that section of class, which will be around module 14 or so. So this is going to be a demonstration of a web robot. And what I'd like you to do is go ahead and close down the presentation now. Go back to the main menu for your computer-based or on-demand training and click on the link for the first demo, and it'll be the demonstration for Module 2. I'll see you in a moment.